Hi, good morning. With tea, freshly awoken. I want to talk about this. What is the astrology chart? I noticed that my awareness had been expanded on this topic when someone asked this question in a group that I'm in, an astrology group, which is run by a longtime astrologer of more than 30 years. He's been doing astrology, so he has this group, and we talk about astrology in that group. Sometimes it's just new people asking questions, and other times it's more serious astrologers raising different angles and aspects to look at. And I don't mean aspects within the chart, but aspects of the astrology as a whole. And so the person asked, I have a friend who's born 30 minutes apart from me. Why are they so different? And the longtime astrologer's answer was that, things change within 30 minutes. Even 30 minutes changes the angles of the planets. And the angles of the planets dictate how the energy is playing out or affecting or imprinting on, right? Being accessed. And that is a true answer. But what I realized that I know in that moment is that, me included, before now, but people are looking at the chart as if it's like who they are. That chart says who they are and who they're going to be in this lifetime. But that's not exactly what the chart is showing. So we all know that the point of doing astrology is because if you know what that chart says, you can kind of navigate your life with some knowledge about what's going on. But also, like, knowing what the energy is, you can use it for your highest good. So when we have difficult aspects in the chart, these are certain angles where we know the energy doesn't quite work together in harmony at that angle. And this creates work for the person who's experiencing that energy to do. And what they may not realize they're doing when they do that is they're working to create balance in the energy so that they can be above the energy, so that they're not impressed upon by that energy and feeling like they need to succumb to what that energy is. So for instance, we have some aspects in the chart which are shown to us as more complementary and more like compatible. And those are certain angles where the energies are meeting each other at a like complementary state. Like, oh, these two energies are meeting at this angle and they like each other at that angle. And in actuality, the more difficult aspects just mean that it's more difficult to create balance within that energy. In actuality, the aspects that are showing where the energy kind of gets along nice, it might be actually harder to create balance in that energy because balance is 0 point. Balance is you get above the energy. So if the energy is comfortable, you don't really have the impetus to do the work to get above that energy. So you may live within that energy perpetually throughout the lifetime or whatever that it's impressing upon you. And maybe you have to wait for a lifetime where that energy is forming an angle that's more difficult in order to work through those particular issues. So here's what I believe the chart is showing us. We are all part of this one source energy. You could call it God, universe, source. We are part of this energy which has fragmented itself. And those fragments are represented in the chart. So as these fragments have been formed, we have taken on the perspective of different fragments, each of us. And not only that, but there's collective fragments, right? Like you could look at a chart for a location or when something started. And the reason why that works is because this is also a fractal. The fragmentation is a fractal as well. So it repeats over and over again. So what's within us, it can also be seen out in the collective. Excuse me, and vice versa. There is a correlation between everything outside of us and inside of us. It's a fractal. So as we who understand how freeing and how nice it feels to be knowing our connection to the all, because that's pure love, and it's no resistance, no pressure, no feelings of inadequacy, no longings, no desires, really just free being. So of course, when we're in these fragments, we are getting to experience those yummy things like desire and longing and lust and creation. That's why we would come into these fragments, right? And some of the fragments are actually looking at angles of energy that they're fragmented into through this lens of lack and pain and suffering. They're really feeling the separation from the all to the utmost degree, right? And they are actually connected to the all, but their perspective, the place that they are in the fractal, blocks their view from that until they escape some of those angles that the energy is blocking them with, right? The more times they balance out the energy that's actually blocking their view from being in that part of the fractal, as we balance out the energy and 0 point the energy, we get above the energy. We see past the energy. So then, so that's what you could see that I've done. Like I'm in one of those, I came in on one of those crevices of the fractal where it looks like if you were looking out, you think that you're separate completely from everything else and very isolated and maybe in pain. But as I balance out the energies of my chart, which some were more difficult, some were easier, all different experiences along the way, I see more clearly and I see the bigger picture view and I know my connection to the all. Because I have specifically gotten above the energy that was fractalized in me to expand my awareness so that I know about that energy because I've studied it, because I knew what it was, because I was in it, because I felt around in it, because I looked through the lens of it. But also now I can see like that I'm also connected to the all. So these astrology charts, if we answered the question, my friend was born 30 minutes apart from me, why are they so different from me? They're so different from you because they're a soul experiencing energy which is a little bit different from yours. Even though you have a lot of similar energy to work with, their experience of that energy is going to be different based on the fact that they're a different soul. It's really that simple. And you'd want to have some of those experiences where you see somebody dealing with similar energy to you and they're doing it a different way than you're doing it. Because just that, like you're at angles of the fractal where you can see each other and you've got some similar things to traverse, but one person's doing it this way and one person's doing it that way, based on the other things around them that they're seeing through. And that right there can expand your awareness because now there's not just one way to handle that energy. There's another way to handle that energy. And this starts to break you out of any limitation on knowing only your little fragment of the fractal. Because there are mirrored fractals. There are mirrored portions of the fractal all around us Depending on what part of the fractal we are in, we know if we can see that or not. And if you don't know what a fractal is, then what I'm saying is going to be very confusing. But like, look up Mandelbrot. That's a fractal. Look at what that looks like, and you can see it's just this repeating pattern, and no matter where you look on the fractal, on the picture, it's always the repeating pattern over and over and over and over and to infinity. Okay? So the astrology chart just shows us what energy, what fractal we are actually working with to balance out. And that energy will always be there, right? You don't destroy energy. That is an experience that we've had because that fractal exists, and we said, oh, I'm going to go into that part of the fractal and look at it. And I'm going to look around and imagine yourself in a kaleidoscope, and it's like, oh, this and this and this. And it's like, if you wanted to stop seeing that certain thing in your kaleidoscope, you'd have to balance out that energy, 0 point that energy. Now, for something like an opposition in your chart, that is going to be something that's more easy, even though it's a difficult aspect, it causes tension, but it's easier to balance that out because you see the example of where you are and you see the example of the opposite. So you know that the middle is the 0 point. If you're looking at something like a square is very much more difficult. We know that the squares are tension filled. If you have a square with somebody in your life, in your relationship, it's hard to get along with that person. It's work. But every time you put in the efforts to work at creating balance in a relationship with somebody like that you have a square with, you're actually learning what you need to learn and knowing what you need to know based on the fact that you came in to experience that section of our fractal. Now you know what that's like. And also you can create balance. Like, you can get along with somebody who has a square. It's just that you know you're going to be ground down, sanded apart, and like you're going to find the balance. And then you're going to feel like, yeah, I can be in the space with this person. So the square is something that's so valuable when it comes to experience, right? And gaining wisdom about what we are doing here. Because the square is something that's going to make you question life and why am I in this, and why is this family member that I love so much always at odds with me, you know? And it just starts you asking questions, and asking you shall receive. This is how you start getting answers. If you don't question anything ever, you're just living within the perspective you have, and you're not going to easily expand your awareness to know what the bigger picture is of what we are doing here. And that's fine if that's not what you're driven to do. But I'm just using the square as an example, as it also serves as an awakener, as something that helps people awaken because it makes them question things. And once we question things, that helps our awakening. Once you question one thing, and the truth is revealed, you start questioning a lot more things. And so if you look at something more like a semi-square. So a semi-square is like a square, but it's just not quite at that angle. So there's still some tension, but it's not quite as hard as the square. So there's all these different angles. Now, then you could have a trine. A trine is said to be a very easy aspect. It's easy for these energies to get along good. You have a trine with somebody in your life, you're getting along really easily with them. You're kind of on the same page. You have the same view. But when you have the same view about somebody, that's not going to challenge you to ask certain questions. That you're not going to get out of your box when you have that mutual validation and perspective with somebody, because you might learn to relate on that. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Maybe that's really nice, That's a nice experience to have, especially if you have a lot of squares with other people. You want to have at least some people you can trine with. All right, so that's what an astrology chart is. What do you think about looking at your chart publicly? Doing a Zoom call with me. We will look at your chart, look at the things that you're having to experience and balance out in your segment of this fractal. And I think one of the benefits of doing so publicly is that we would show people that everybody's different. and that having a contrary opinion to somebody else is only natural. You might share opinions with the people that you're trining with. That's nice too, but it doesn't discredit the other view. It doesn't make the other view invalid. In fact, if you're trining with a bunch of people and then there is somebody who's squaring that trine that you have with somebody else, I believe that's called like a yod, or there's some sort of significance to that structure. And that person that is like squaring a bunch of people who are kind of on the same page is valid and is vital. And so the sooner that we all understand that everybody's different, everybody's looking through a different angle, and they're meant to, the sooner we can start respecting, first of all, our own view, not needing the outside validation, knowing that our view is valid, whatever it may be, and also their view is valid, whatever it may be. So I think like showing just everyday people's charts could be very beneficial to helping people understand that. We do see like a lot of astrologers, like people who have been doing it 30 years or more, they love analyzing what these aspects are doing and how it feels and how it plays out. And that is great. That is fascinating. It's pretty neat to know that 9 times out of 10, these energies play out this way. Because you can predict human behavior and things like that. But ultimately, I would think that eventually that person's goal, even though that they're predicted to act that way in that energy, might not be to 0 point that energy and see above it. But I've talked about before, maybe I didn't even post that video, but like the 4th dimension is where we get into this realization that, you know, this is like you can start to see the feedback in your environment. And what can keep you stuck there is analysis. And so astrologers are always analyzing. And a lot of people are analyzing, and it's a fun thing to do. Like, I like astrology. My mind likes to dig and find mysteries and uncover things and discover new things and make new connections. I really like that. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I am saying, like, this is why someone who's like a 30-year astrologer doesn't see this bigger picture that I'm now sharing from my view that I have. Because maybe they've been busy analyzing all the things. And there's enough feedback in the experience of doing that validates it. It's self-validating. The more you study it, the more you see proof of it. So if you're seeing proof, you're not questioning. And once you stop questioning, you're going to stay at that level of awareness until something makes a tower moment where it like puts the light on something and you can't deny it. You know what I mean? All right, I'm going to stop that there. Let me know if you are open to looking at your chart publicly with me. I'd love to do it, just as an experiment. It's all an experiment, right?